All right, let's dive into one of the most intense and frankly chaotic books in the entire Hebrew Bible, the book of Judges. Now, if you're coming in expecting a straightforward story with clear-cut heroes and villains, you are in for a seriously wild ride. This is a story of a nation just completely coming apart at the seams.
To really get what's happening in Judges, you have to see it for what it is, a sequel. The book right before it, Joshua, it's like this epic, triumphant blockbuster movie, right? The Israelites conquer the promised land, they're all united, and God's promises are coming true. It ends on a huge high note. But Judges? Oh, Judges is the dark, gritty sequel where literally everything that could go wrong does. It's a total reversal of fortune.
And this mood shift is immediate. As one scholar, Dr. David Howard, puts it, in Judges, we find the dark underbelly of the victory story we just saw. The book just pivots instantly from success to the hardcore consequences of disobedience and compromise. See, the Israelites were supposed to drive out the Canaanites completely, but they didn't. And Judges is basically a long, tragic story about what happens next. So, how does this downward spiral actually work? Well, the author of Judges structures the entire book around this fascinating and, honestly, deeply troubling pattern. It's a repeating cycle of chaos that traps the nation for centuries, and it is the key to understanding everything that's about to happen. Here it is. This four-step cycle is the engine that drives the whole narrative. First, the people sin. They abandon God and usually start worshiping the local Canaanite gods. As a result, they fall into servitude. They get oppressed by their enemies. Then, when they can't take it anymore, they cry out for help. That's supplication. And every single time, in response, God provides salvation, raising up a deliverer, a judge, to save them. And for a little while, there's peace, and then, boom, the cycle starts all over again. Now here's the kicker. This isn't just a flat loop going around and around. No, it's a downward spiral. With each and every rotation of this cycle, the sins of the people get worse, their enemies get more brutal, and, this is crucial, the so-called judges God sends become more and more flawed themselves. The whole nation is just in a state of total moral and social decay. Okay, so to really get a handle on the chaos inside the book, we kind of have to look at the world of conflict happening outside of it. The Israelites weren't living in a bubble. Their story unfolds during one of the most turbulent and violent periods in all of ancient history. So the events in Judges are happening right as the world is shifting from the late Bronze Age to the early Iron Age. And right around 1200 BC, something catastrophic happens. We call it the Bronze Age collapse. Major empires, we're talking the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, they just crumble. Cities are burned to the ground, and these waves of displaced people, sometimes called the Sea Peoples, are sweeping through the region creating chaos. This backdrop of global upheaval is the perfect chaotic setting for the internal chaos we're reading about in Judges. So you might be wondering, how do we know so much about the Canaanite religion that was so tempting to the Israelites? Well, it's actually an amazing story. In 1929, a Syrian farmer is out plowing his field, and his plow hits a stone slab. Turns out it was part of an ancient tomb. This one little accident led to the discovery of the entire lost city of Ugarit and its royal library, which was filled with thousands of clay tablets detailing all the myths and beliefs of the Canaanites. What a find! And those tablets gave us a front-row seat to their whole religious system. The head god was a guy named El, kind of a distant father figure type. His wife was Asherah, a mother goddess. But the real star of the show, the one with all the de facto power, was Baal. He was the god of storms and fertility. Now, if you're an ancient farming society, the guy who controls the rain is the one who really matters, right? And so Baal became the main rival for Israel's worship. Okay, so this brings us to let's call them the heroes of the story, the judges themselves. And this is where the story gets really, really complicated, because these flawed saviors are often a huge part of the problem, even as God remains faithful to his promise to save the people. I mean, it's a fair question to ask, and the book practically screams at you to ask it. When you actually read their stories, hero is not always the first word that's going to pop into your head. In fact, you start to realize pretty quickly that they're a reflection of the nation's own decay. So first off, forget the image of a courtroom judge in a black robe. That's not what these guys were. They were military leaders, more like charismatic warlords, raised up to fight off oppressors. But man, were they flawed. Take Gideon. He starts off as this humble, reluctant hero, but he ends his life by making a golden idol that leads his own family and all of Israel right back into worshiping false gods. And then there's Samson, a man with incredible, God-given strength, whose personal and moral life was just one catastrophic disaster after another.
And this incredible contrast reveals the central theological point of the whole book. The people are faithless. Their leaders are deeply flawed. Sometimes they're downright awful. But the one constant character in the story is God, who remains faithful. Every single time the people cry out, no matter how badly they've messed up, he hears them and sends a deliverer. In a book just packed with broken people, God's faithfulness is the only thing that actually holds.
So why? Why fill an entire book with this relentless cycle of failure, violence, and moral decay? Is it just a bleak, depressing history lesson? No, not at all. The author has a very specific and powerful point to make with all this chaos, and it's been building this entire time.
It all comes down to this. The Book of Judges isn't just a history, it's a powerful political and theological argument. It's meant to demonstrate in graphic detail exactly what happens when there is no centralized, godly leadership. When everyone is just left to do whatever they think is right, the result isn't freedom, it's total anarchy, it's civil war, and it's moral collapse.
And this is the famous line that concludes the book. It's actually repeated several times right near the end. It's the author's final diagnosis for all the horror we've just read. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. This is the punchline the entire narrative has been building towards. The problem wasn't just foreign invaders. The problem was internal. There was no king, no unifying authority to guide the people.
And that is the ultimate purpose of the book. All this unrelenting negativity is designed to make the reader long for a solution. The chaos of Judges is there to lay the groundwork for the books that come next, Samuel and Kings, by making a really compelling case for establishing a monarchy. The book is basically shouting from the rooftops, "Look at this mess! Don't you just wish there was a good king to fix all this?"
So the book masterfully shows us the problem. A leaderless nation spiraling into self-destruction. In the end, Judges serves as this powerful and pretty grim case study in human nature. It argues that without a righteous standard to follow, societies will inevitably decay from the inside out. And that tees up the next massive question in Israel's story. If a king was the answer they were looking for, what kind of king could possibly lead them out of all that darkness?